I had a patient who, as far as I could tell, was in his late 70s and 80s. He was another bedridden patient who was sent assistance and basically taken care of in a hospital. He couldn't walk, he couldn't really move his body. He could somewhat talk, but not like lucidly like you or I. You couldn't get him into a good conversation. And so when the nurses came to clean him, to bathe him specifically, he had a sore patch near his nether regions. And so the nurses were cleaning him and also putting oil and powder on those areas to help it heal. And when they did that, I'm assuming it was really sensitive given that it was a sore patch, and perhaps it hurt upon pressure. But when the nurses did that, he was like squirming. He was like squirming like this, and he was like telling the nurses, "Stop! You're hurting me." I'm sympathetic to the fact that without the oil and the powder, the area might not heal and might be infected. In that scenario, what really affected me was that he could only plead with the nurses to stop. He could only say stop. And it wasn't exactly very assertive either. It was just like, "Stop, you're hurting me." Like, "Stop." It wasn't very strong in a way, the way he said it. It was flaccid, it was deflated, very defeated in a sense. So he had lost so much. He's been reduced to less than human in a sense. He was so skinny and he looked shriveled. The person, the body itself shrunk, but the proportions were all off because the bones were still long, but there was little muscle, little fat. The substance in him was gone. I looked at him and I just thought, do I want to end up in that state? This reminded me of what my mom said to me, which was, I don't want to be hooked up to a machine or two machines to sustain my life. Don't let me live like that. For me personally, I don't want to be exactly taken care of when I'm at that age. I want to be able to walk when I'm 80. I want to be able to still do things. I want to be able to potentially talk to my grandchildren in great philosophical discussions, perhaps. From this experience, I was reminded of the Marginal Decade, a concept coined by Dr. Peter Attia. And the marginal decade is basically what you want to be able to do in your last 10 years of life. It's uncomfortable to think about, the last 10 years of a life. What do you want to do? What do you want to be able to still do? No one really wants to think about that period of time, but we all should. And what I've learned from the Stoics is that the Stoics meditated on death constantly. Well, there's a reason for that. We distract ourselves from our own mortality so much, and then when we start thinking about it, we get away from the subject matter cognitively because it's fucking scary, man. It's scary to think about the world without you to perceive it anymore. It's a very egocentric point of view, but at the end of the day, we're all egocentric, and imagining a world without you is one very weird and honestly sort of unimaginable in a sense until you really think about it and accept it. And death is not going away. It's always going to be with us. And whilst modern technology might be making strides, might be bringing life-extending options, as is the study of many researchers like David Sinclair, I wouldn't put all my chips into that. I wouldn't put all my chips into the fact that we can live forever. More that death is inevitable.
I am inevitable.
And even if we do get the technology to be able to live forever, to never age again, we can still kill ourselves. We can still just grab a gun and shoot ourselves. Unless we've somehow managed to even counter that. If so, well fuck, man. I'm sure there's going to be another way to kill ourselves. I think if we were to be able to live forever, we would be far less mature. I would say the majority of us would be far less intelligent, simply because we don't need to be, and simply because we don't have a deadline for life. You know, we can do everything on our own time. You know, I don't want to do this because there's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. There's always going to be tomorrow. Literally, if you live forever, there's always going to be tomorrow. But this is all just a long tangent. So going back to death, what ends up happening to most people is that they start having a slow death. From their 60s, their body and mind degenerates until they eventually die. Dr. Attia's point is to have a fast death. So instead of dragging it out and suffering for 10 to 20 years, you suffer for 1 to 5 years, and then you're gone. Instead, these 15 other years, you would just literally spend enjoying your life. You know, doing the things that you want to do, instead of being bedridden for 10 years, not being able to do what you want to do for 20 years. And so, to do this, there are 4 horsemen that he outlines that you must counteract. And they are cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, cancer, and metabolic syndrome and other related diseases. So from the book, it heavily emphasizes the importance of preventative medicine overall, and he coins this medicine 3.0. You know, so instead of reactive medicine, which is medicine 2.0, or what we have currently. And so this is really important because so many diseases related to living great in old age start much, much earlier. Like, maybe in your 20s, depending on your dispositions. Like, for example, early onset Alzheimer's starts in your 20s. Like, that's fucking scary. And so, Medicine 3.0 is all about preventing diseases 20 to 30 years before they actualize. Because what you do now influences the future, especially with your health. So I've already done a separate video on cardiovascular disease, so you can look at that for more guidance. But in this video, I'll let you know how you can optimize your life currently in order to live the best at the end. So look, if you don't want to do this, that's perfectly understandable. You know, you might be super young and think, you know, why would I want to do this? Why would I need to do all this now? You know, I'm going to enjoy my life, and I would agree to an extent. You know, like, why wouldn't you? I guess I'm not the type of person who wants to excessively do that. You know, and if you aren't as well, keep watching. On the other hand, you may be a person who, you know, wants to learn these things, keep them in the back of your mind, you know, and just wait until you want to do this, want to do these things, to really preserve your health so that you can really live in your old age. So if you haven't noticed, I'm of the mind that what you do today influences what you do tomorrow and every day onward. Right? The habits you ingrain right now determine who you are, who you will be in the future, and what you do. And that is one perspective that I feel very strongly for. And so without further ado, the first thing you want to really dial in is exercise. And I mean, exercise, you already knew it. Exercise is, of course, going to be on the list. It is the miracle drug of all kind. And so I won't list off all the benefits, because you can literally just Google benefits of exercise, boom, get you like 5, 6 more than that. But instead, I'll tell you specifically what you need to do to stave off the diseases that I mentioned before. So, you want to get zone 2 cardio, 30 minutes each time for 4 times total in a week. In other words, zone 2 cardio is basically a pace where you can barely have a good conversation with someone. You know, if you can still talk to someone comfortably, but you know, you're going pretty hard. It's not like walking. Walking is for the most part zone 1. But if you're like, you're doing an exercise, say you're on a bike, but you can still talk to someone comfortably, it's most likely zone 2. If you can't really talk to someone anymore, that's past zone 2, that's zone 3 now. And so you want to get a minimum of 120 minutes of cardio, of zone 2 cardio a week, but the more you get, the better. And so that was like the sort of low intensity exercise. You also want to get intense work as well. So this would be like a zone 5 cardio, like hard stuff. And so for this, it's much less time. It's like 30 minutes per week total, and that should be fine. So you could do like, you could split it up into like 2 days, so 15 minutes each. You could split it up even further for like 6 times, so 5 minutes each. Really doesn't matter as long as you get 30 minutes total. And so zone 5 cardio can be like HIIT cardio, where you're going all out. That period of all out counts as zone 5. This could also just be a sprint of any kind. So those were for cardio. Besides that, you want to build muscle with strength training. Something fundamental is that you need muscle to move. And with age, you lose muscle. There's no stopping it. Right? No matter what, you're going to lose muscle as you get older and older from a certain point in time, which is like in your 30s and 40s. And so the more muscle you have right now, the more you will have when you're at that marginal decade. So without muscle, you won't be able to move. And if you want to move, that's necessary and sufficient to move. And of course, you don't want to jump on fucking steroids, because then you will shorten your life before you even get to your 60s or 70s. So don't do that. Instead, strength train. Go to the gym and work out your muscles to get bigger, specifically for hypertrophy. If you want to learn more, there's plenty more videos on that on the channel that you can look for. And there's also a book that I've written down below. And the final one for exercise is stability training. Because the thing is, so many injuries that lead to death during old age are falls. There's an entire ream grandmother fell and help, I can't get up.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
It's we can't imagine it now, but that might be us in the future if we don't train our stability. And so training your stability is all about being able to mitigate falls. And if you do fall, then getting back up. Of course, this getting back up also ties with strength training. So if you want to walk, if you want to be able to move in your 80s, you gotta do this. And so all in all, there's a shit ton of exercise, man. It's a fuck ton. But if you're someone who can afford it all within your time schedule, do it. When you retire, you will automatically have the time, so you can definitely do this when you retire. If you're not at that point in time like me, it's best to do the most that you can. I would say the most important one to pursue is strength training for hypertrophy. Gaining more muscle takes much more time than developing cardiac capacities with cardio, rather than developing stability, because muscle takes lots of time to grow. And so if you were to only do one, strength train and gain muscle. And so intertwined with exercise is nutrition. Look, if you are eating like shit, I'm sorry, you're not going to last long. You're not. NAFLD, otherwise known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is rampant in the US because of people's choices in food. It's correlated with obesity, but it's mostly because of the shit food you eat. So stop it. It's you probably already know the shit food you're eating. You already probably know what's healthy. So do it. For more specifics, eat more protein. You aren't going to get cancer from protein. You just aren't. Alright? Your kidneys are not going to die from it. You're not. So you want to get 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So this will also help facilitate more muscle growth, which is what you want. For carbs, you want to eat low glycemic foods rich in fiber, for the most part. These foods do not spike your blood sugar nearly as high as others, and so that's the main reason why you want to eat foods with those characteristics. For fats, you will need to experiment on your own, given your blood lipids, more saturated fat or less, checking does this raise my lipids, does this decrease it at all. And so in general, getting more unsaturated fats, specifically monounsaturated fats like in extra virgin olive oil, those will help your blood lipid panel a lot. To be honest, a lot of this nutrition stuff is pretty mainstream, I would say. I'm pretty sure everyone knows to eat more whole foods, to eat less junk. It's not really about knowing the information anymore, it's all about doing it now. Overall though, you want to control your calorie intake. Gaining excessive weight will simply kill you faster. I don't care what the body positivity movement says. You're going to die at a younger age than I will. Statistically speaking, you will. Unless an accident happens. Unless Truckun comes along and sends me to another world. That may be debatably better. More on the point, if you're obese, lose the fat. It simply is not conducive to living the best life in your 80s. If you can even get there. Which I do not expect you to, if you're obese. So the next is sleep. And I made a lot of videos on sleep, and I'll continue to harp on it. Get your fucking sleep, or you can risk Parkinson's and Alzheimer's later. 7 to 8 hours minimum, 9 to 10 optimum. So finally, there is emotional health, and if life fucking sucks, what was the point? This is something that in Peter Attia's book, he spent an entire chapter on, which is basically just living the best life. If optimizing all of this makes your life absolutely miserable, then don't do it, because what's the point in living a miserable long life when the point was to live a long life with enjoyment? Like, you are hyper optimizing to get more time, to have more enjoyable experiences, but you're sacrificing enjoyable experiences throughout the entire time you're optimizing. Not worth it. So have good people around you. Have good people around you and supporting you, and live life happily. I mean, it's all for naught if you don't. It's all meaningless if you don't live your life. So if you've learned something from this video, drop a like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.